Q&A live with me, Danielle The Happy Medium. I hope you are all well, and I hope you are all keeping okay here on the channel. I was only here about 2 weeks ago, so I am getting a little better at it. Hopefully you'll come along, you'll join us with your questions, and we can talk about your mediumship, we can talk about your development, we can talk about anything to do with spirituality, you know, whatever it is that, you know, is your bag. So the comments box is open. I've got some questions as always from my lot, and also just off a class I've done today, which I thought was a great topic to talk about. Let me talk a little bit about what's going on. So first and foremost, I've got my mediumship classes starting back in September, so that we're taking the summer break off as always. These are for those designed for those who are wanting to look at their development more, or certainly look more into doing stuff with their development and working with their development to the best of their ability. These are online, so these are done via Zoom, 7 p.m. UK time. So if you want to get involved in them, the website link is already in there. I was first on the ball, and I've got to be honest, I was definitely on the ball. So you're more than welcome to come along with them. They start back in September, so do come along if you want to join with that. I do have a lot of in-person training going on. The majority of that is all gone. I am excited to announce my residentials are back. So they're back next year. First one is the 9th of March to the 12th of March next year, up here in the northeast of England. And spaces have already gone for that there as well. That isn't on the website. You'll need to get in touch with me via the back of the website if you're interested in a space on that. And that's 4 nights, 3 days. That's what it is. It's cheap as chips and all. I've got some exciting, nice stuff in there. So if you want to come along and join me for that one, you're more than welcome to. I've got questions in already. So spirit time. Good evening, Danielle. Hi, are you all right? I hope you're well. Yeah, it is evening here. It's late tea time, heading into the evening. Do have a circle online. I'm on the Facebook group. I could run some through the summer, if I'm honest with you. Definitely not in July, because honest to God, July is just rammed. Like, it's my schedule's busy anyway, but honest to God, July is just absolutely crazy. I could maybe put some in August, if I'm honest with you. I could do a couple in August. Could maybe run one once a month. Yeah, I don't see why not. You know, I'd certainly do that. I used to do them for my students and things. So yeah, I don't see why not. I can have a look at the diary, see what I can accommodate, see if I can put that in there. Yeah, leave it with us. I'll see what I can do. Let me put that in me book of notes with everything else that I have to do. Open circle. Look, dates. Question mark. Yeah, leave that with us. I'll certainly will take a look at that and see if I can do something with that. If I can accommodate it, I will. If I can't accommodate it. I've seen a few people asking for this, like online, like sort of open circles and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't see why not. I'll see what I can do. Can't promise anything, but I'll see what I can do. I promise you there on that one, spirit time. I hope you're well anyway out there. I hope you're keeping okay. I hope everything's all right with you. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about animals. Because lots and lots of people talk to me about, like, Danielle, do you bring animals through in communications? Like, Danielle, like, how easy is it to do animals in communications? And, you know, is animals part of the evidential mediumship world? And the answer in short to all them questions is yes. Animals, for me, I think, is one of the nicer things to see when I'm doing any kind of demonstration of mediumship or even private sittings. I'll be honest with you, many years ago, a girl booked me, I think I've told this story on here before, but I'll tell it again. Many years ago, a lady booked me for a private sitting. She booked me for an hour. And I remember sort of bringing different people through, you know, and she could sort of take them and stuff, but it wasn't quite hitting where I wanted it to hit. And I thought, I wonder what's going on here. And I thought, I'm just gonna. I just happened to look at the gentleman. There was a gentleman here. It was a granddad. And I just happened to look at the gentleman, and there was this dog. And I said to her, look, you know, if you can't take this, then, you know, I'm going to have to either refund you or, you know, have you come back or whatever. And I says, I've got this dog here, and she busts through crying. And anyway, I ended up doing this full sort of 45 minutes sitting, 50 minutes of sitting, just on these dogs. I've got to be honest with you on that. So I tend to find when I'm doing mediumship or mediumship development, or when I'm doing private sittings or demonstrations, sometimes people are not always looking for humans, they're looking for the four-legged humans. I've got to be honest with you on that one. And I've got to be honest, I do like to do a dog from time to time. Dogs for me, dogs, cats. What's one of the more unusual ones? I've done tortoises, I've done a spider, somebody who had a spider. Snakes, I've done snakes as well. I've done a lot of range of different animals over the years. I've got to be honest with you on that one. So for me, animals are an important part of evidential mediumship, something that definitely is important, because sometimes people, like I say, are not always looking for the humans. Sometimes they're always looking for, you know, the four-legged ones. And for me, I've seen some beautiful readings. The evidence is very different as well. So if you're really looking to explore and enhance your mediumship development, incorporating animals into that is really, really helpful there. I've got to be honest with you on that one. For me, it's just another step in your development, another way to work energy, to work a different type of communication. Lots of people look at evidence in regards to, you know, the family, the loved ones, that type of thing. But animals really do help you to explore another side of mediumship. The other thing with animals as well, they use a lot of the lower clairs. So if you're looking to improve your lower clairs, so that's your clairsentience, your claircogniliance, your clairempathy, just to name a few there. The animals are a very good way of being able to explore them communications, or certainly explore them sensory systems, so that they, you know, become a lot more stronger, or certainly, we're not so much stronger, probably a better way for you to understand them or to bleed them through more helpfully than your clairvoyance or your clairaudience there. So for me, you know, animals bring a diverse range there, I've got to be honest. Different types of styles of communication, excellent evidential mediumship, and also enhances certain clairs that you may not always use on a day-to-day basis. So for me, animals are very, very good. And one of the things I do tend to know, so animals, they tend to sometimes be there before the humans are. I've got to be honest with you on that one. So if you're looking to sort of enhance on this clair range, then it may be something for you to look at. I'm not really a big fan of the word clair, but you know, I know you will understand that word probably more, so I'll use that word because it probably helps your minds a little bit more. So for me, you know, the animals are an excellent part of your development, and certainly it's a refreshing change, especially, you know, if you're watching a demonstration of mediumship and there's lots of moms and dads and, you know, aunties, uncles, whatever may come through. It's nice to add something a little bit different. And I've got to be honest, I've been on a lot of demonstrations over the years, and I've seen like dogs sitting beside owners. I was just private sitting there last night, and there was a dog, you know, come through for one of the ladies in there. You know, it's nice. It's nice to see. It's nice to do something a little bit different as well. It's nice to be able to keep exploring that evidential range and enhancing on that evidential range. So for me, animals are certainly part of the evidential world, and certainly very helpful if you're looking to push your development to the next level. So keep that one in mind, and certainly check that one out. So I have a group on Facebook for many of you who may or may not know. Certainly check it out, Danielle The Happy Medium. And in there we talk about different things. And one of the things that's been coming up quite a bit is trance. And I've talked about trance a lot. I'm just going to put myself over there. So trance is something I've talked about a lot on and off over on the channel. You know, for me, trance is an extraordinarily interesting area of development that many people still are quite in the dark about, if I'm honest with you, or certainly have a limited amount of knowledge or awareness with trance. So there's a couple of elements of trance. There's trance healing, there's trance communications, which is loved ones through the spoken word, or there's trance philosophy. I do all three, actually. I started playing with trance healing a couple of years ago, and I've got to be honest, I genuinely do like trance healing a lot. I've started playing more in the healing world, and I'll talk a little bit more about healing in a minute. So for me, you know, trance is very much the idea of working more deeply with the mind. So when we talk about evidential mediumship, just as an example, We talk a lot about sort of skimming over the top of the mind. So when we're working with evidence and stuff, we tend to sort of take the basics of the mindsets. When we start to work in the worlds of trance, we start to look more at the deeper sets of levels, of more of a deeper awareness, or a deeper stretching of the mind, or a stretching of the database. Now, again, the mechanics in which that I use for trance were given to me by the spirit world. They were an extension of the evidential ones that I use. So these are very much mine and were given to me by the spirit world again, as was my healing aspect as well. So as I've done more and more of the mechanical work with the spirit world using these sets of mechanics, they've started to add more to them, so I can play in different areas. I can look at trance, I can look at healing, I can look at different aspects in which that is helpful for training mediums. So trance for me is very much an extension of a deepening of an awareness through the mindset. And so for me, when we're working, just for as example, trance speaking, just as an example of trance speaking. Trance speaking is where the spirit world, in the sets of mechanics that I've used, is where they've started to interlace into the energy that is moving around the brain. Now, it's a bit more, it's not complicated, but it's certainly a little bit more refined. That would be the word I'd use. And so my understanding of the trance mechanics that the spirit world have given me is very much working inside of the mindset and working with the electrics. Now, so a lot of trances work through, and a lot of mediumships work through the thought-based matter, which to an extent is correct. There's nothing wrong with that. Excuse me. But there is more to it than just this. And as I've worked more with trance, and I've done more trance speaking, and I've done more trance philosophy and things like that, I've come to understand their mechanics a lot more. So for me, trance is a very much an acceptance of the mind, very much an acceptance of working with the spirit world, and a much more deeper awareness. Trance tends to be a use of the voice. So when we're doing trance speaking or trance philosophy, it's a use of the voice, and it's also allowing the spirit world also to work with the mechanics of the body as well. So I have a particular student, or did have a particular student, she's now out in the industry, who when she did trance communicators and stuff, would make her stand up and move her around, and not a great deal, but would move around chairs and such things. Had it been probably developed more and worked more, there would have been more worked in that. It was amazing, I've got to be honest with you on that. I've only ever seen that a couple of times, once on my student and once on some more trance nights that I've been on. So for trance communications and trance philosophy, there's two sides of it. There's the speaking, but also the moving side of it as well. There is transfiguration, which I'm sure many of you may have heard of or not heard of. And transfiguration is where the facial features will start to shift and alter to look like your loved ones, or to look like a guide, depending on who it is that's coming into the mindset there. Then there's the trance healing world. So the trance healing is where we incorporate trance with the healing aspects. And trance healing is very, very interesting, I've got to be honest. And that we start up moving into the worlds of psychic surgery and stuff like that. Psychic surgery is not something that I do personally. Have I seen it done? Yes, I have seen it done. But and have I experienced it myself? No, I'll be honest with you, no, I haven't. But trance healing is very much working on a deeper level of the, not so much the cellular structure, because we can't really change the cellular structure, but they're certainly working on a deeper level within the electrical system. That's the best way to put it. So trance for me has a couple of different aspects to it. All is interesting, all's very exciting, I've got to be honest. So if you're interested in trance, some of the myths around trance, some of the myths are spirit world take over your body. False. There's nobody can take over your body. So your body only has one soul, and that soul's inside your body. The only time that soul and the body separate is when you've passed over to the spirit world. Other than that, your soul stays in your body. It can't be moved out your body. Nothing can get into the body because your soul's already in there. So one soul per body, that's it. Nobody. So this idea or thought that the spirit world come in and take over your body and is really false. It's a really poor lack of intelligence and a poor lack of understanding, if I'm truthfully honest with you on that one. Another myth about trance is that they can come in and sort of just take over. nobody can take our, no guide. You know, one of the biggest myths or things I see in the industry is where guides step in on you all the time, or loved ones just step in. It's not true. And the reason it's not true for is because you always have the power. You as the instrument, so us as the instruments who work for spirit and do communicational work or whatever, you know, particular arena you do for the spirit world, they have no way of infringing upon you. They're not allowed to. They're not entitled to. They're not. It's against the rules and regulations that the energy system runs by in the spirit world. One of the things I say a lot with students, and this is just as an example, students will actually have this question today in one of my classes, which was where students said to me, I'm not sleeping very well, and I'm aware that there's lots of people talking to us and looking at us. Now, what that tends to tell me as someone who's sharing knowledge is that you haven't stepped out the spirit world enough. So your mind's still clicked in. Does that make sense? Now, one of the things that can do this is having guided meditations, which everybody knows if you watch my channel hard enough, I don't agree with guided meditations. If you're sitting in the power before bed, things like that, you will have the spirit world come forward because you've opened the mind up, you've moved the mind over to the spirit world, and what's happened is you haven't quite come back, or your mind hasn't come quite back into your body, or you've just been slightly still clicked in. And so what happens is that the spirit world come forward because they still believe that you're still working. The thing with the spirit world is there's no time frame, so there is no 24-hour clock over there. So to them, every minute of every second of every hour of every day is working time in their opinion. All right, so what we have to understand is that it's important that if we're sitting thinking about the spirit world, we're just a second closer to them. If you're sitting in the power before bed, you're a second closer to them. What you got to learn to do is keep with the earthly things. So you're going about your day-to-day business and different thing about the spirit world. You know what I mean? You're going about and do whatever it is you need to do. People often say to me, I can, this happens and that happens, and 99.9% of the time, it's because you've gone looking for the spirit world first. And this is the same with trance and communicators and everything else that goes with the spirit world. Trance, the guides and the loved ones can't come anywhere near you in trance unless you invite them forward. So if I'm doing trance, my people will all be aware of what we're going to do because the intelligence is at play. But I do still have to actively ask my people to step forward. I have to actively encourage the loved ones to step forward and work with them electrics and that mindset and them circuits in order so that I can get the very best from the trance, for either the circle I'm doing or the demonstration I'm doing or the closed group I do or whatever it may be. They won't come anywhere near me unless I'm actively inviting them to come forward. So it's important to recognize this myth about how guides can take over your body and loved ones can take over your body and ghosts can take over your body. And I've done a video on ghosts just to sort of refresh people's minds on ghosts. Ghosts are but memories. That's all ghosts are. There's actually no intelligence inside of ghosts. Ghosts are memories associated or built through a collection of memories all put together, okay, from a property, from a dwelling, from any type of place in which forests, beaches, whatever it may be, because it's all built on energy, all of it, right? So what you have to understand is that when people talk to me about ghosts, what they're really saying to me is Danielle, what I've seen here is I have seen a collection of energies. If there has been no movement of the mind, so if I'm working with somebody who has no skill set at all, or has done nothing with the spirit world in any way, shape or form, what they're saying to me is that I've looked at a collection of energies that have come together and have formulated into a person, a shape, whatever my eyes or my mind has decided to impersonate that bit of energy to be. Now, if somebody who is, and let's just say for example they're in a dwelling or a ghost hunt or something like that, right? If that person has an ability or has moved the mind in some way, shape or form to the spirit world, then there is a chance, and bear in mind with anything like this, there has to be an intelligence link. So what it really means is if there's somebody in this group within the dwelling or, within this sort of property or whatever it may be, has loved ones over there, and that intelligence can link with that to the person in the room, then there is a big possibility, if the mind has been slightly shifted or moved in some way, then yeah, there is a possibility within a ghost hunt or whatever that that person can be taken. The issue with some things is that you can't pull through an intelligence on a ghost hunt or on a dwelling or whatever it may be if there is nobody in the room to take that information. Because when I've talked heavily a lot on here about spiritual intelligence and understanding how the mechanics, not just of mechanics of development, but also the mechanics of energy and the mechanics of understanding how the spirit world is designed and set up, it cannot and will not be applicable for their intelligence to step forward. So that's the spirit world to me and you, or the communicator to me and you, if there is no way in which that can be proven, shown, or the person within the room or within that dwelling or within whatever can be taken. If it can't be taken, that there's no way they're going to send somebody from the 1800s to that group or that dwelling or whatever. And I've seen this a lot with houses and stuff where there's been a lot of sort of disturbance. So for example, there may have been some violence, or there may have been this, or there may have been that, just depending on whatever, a lot of arguments, let's just say, right? And then what tends to happen is that they start to do building work, just as an example. They knock a couple of walls out, they maybe move a couple of doors around, you know, whatever it may be there. You'll tend to find you'll start and pick up some activity in there. Now that's not activity of the spirit world. It's an activity of the energies coming together and colliding together in order to formulate a sort of larger piece of energy that may be picked up. And again, I see this a lot with regards to just not quite a good enough understanding of the actual mechanical database of how actually the spirit world works and how that intelligence works, wrapping around not only mediumship development that we're talking about and the things that you do, but also understanding just how energy works down here, in order so that people have a better understanding of how them mainframes work, if I can say that to you. So for me, it's important to understand that when we're talking about energy, we're talking about ghosts, or we're talking about intelligence, we have a fundamental understanding of just the baseline that's working there, so that what we don't do is, one, scare the public, two, we don't allow things to sort of where the spirit world's getting blamed and such like things with regards to that. So for me, it's important that we understand, excuse me, the mechanical base that we're working with. Spirit Trance asked me, what do you think of spirit boxes? So spirit boxes are just picking up frequency. It's energy. All right. Now, here's where the intelligence may play a part. So say, for example, it was done on a social media platform, right? And somebody was using a spirit box for them particular reasons. There is a high probability that the people that are coming through the spirit box can be taken because of the amount of general public that may be there, right? That's a high possibility. The reason being is that intelligence knows that that loved one or their loved ones may be within that group. That's how smart and the understanding of the mechanical work of frames that they work with. If that spirit box was in, I don't know, ghost hunt or in a dwelling or whatever, and the person that come through that was from the 1800s, but nobody in that room was from the family, knew the extended family, had any friends in common, then that would tell me it's just picking up on energy that has been disturbed or moved within the property, the dwelling, the hospital, the ghost hunt, whatever it may be. So it's about thinking about the mechanics and the intelligence first before anything else. I mean, spirit boxes, dowsing rods, pendulums, tarot cards, they're all under the same sort of idea. If you're using tarot cards and linking the mind to the spirit world, then it's spiritually based. If you're using dowsing rods and you're moving your mind to the spirit world, then it's spiritually inclined, because there's a possibility and an opportunity for the spirit world to interact with them things. But the mind has to be moved in order for them things to go on. And further to that, there has to be somebody in the room that can take the information that's coming over. If the mind hasn't been moved and nobody in the room can understand what it is that's coming through them rods, pendulums, tarot cards, whatever, then it's of the psychic parameter. And the psychic parameter is a collection and combination of many different energies all clubbing together to give you the impression, or you as the individual is taking that impression. You have to understand as well, depending on how fearful the mind is, right? Spirit boxes, dowsing rods, pendulums, tarot cards, even mediumship development. Fear plays a factor here. Fear plays a factor with mediumship development and closing the mind down. So stop it. It still moves, but probably doesn't allow as much information through as it should, right? Fear, when we're working with dowsing rods, dwellings, anything like that, ultimately, if the mind hasn't been shifted, and we're not really talking about the spirit world here just yet, if the mind hasn't been shifted and it's just a human holding on to them and they're fearful, they can interpret, higher medium love, they can interpret and move that information around because of the way in which the mind is fearful, if that makes sense. If the mind isn't fearful and the mind's being shifted to the spirit world in a reasonably good way, and then the influence of the spirit world is more satisfactory, then you are going to have more of the spirit world because the fear is not playing interactive. I tend to see this a lot when, just as an example, private sittings. So I've talked on and off over the years about different private sittings and things like that. So I remember, I think I might have talked about this, but maybe on Facebook. I remember many, many years ago, I used to have my telephone number on Facebook and stuff. I didn't do that anymore. But a particular individual rang me from down south somewhere, had been to some group setting situation somewhere down in the Midlands, maybe a bit further down. I can't quite remember where she was from. They'd been having some sort of readings and such like things, and an individual in there, the particular psychic or medium or whatever it had been reading for this individual, and told her that basically if she didn't leave a partner, then her son would die. That's what they said to her. Now, everybody would know and understand that Spirit would never tell you them things. You were never allowed to know when people are going to pass, because nobody knows that but the divine. Only the divine knows when they're going to go back towards the spirit world, all right? But what this shows a clear example of where fear interferes with the reading, and readers go off what their mind is participatively thinking rather than what's actually being presented by the cards or by the rods or by the pendulum. So whenever we're doing any kind of work, we have to have a good understanding of our own mindset. We also have to have a good understanding of where we're triggered fear-wise, what triggers us versus what triggers will then trigger whatever it is that's coming through. So if we're quite fearful about our diviner, say we're fearful about, being out at night on our own, you will bleed that through your work, and what we can do is project that onto sitters, project that onto others. This is where I always say opinions. I've got plenty of opinions. I've spoken about plenty of opinions on here and all of that. But opinions are formulated by the ego. It's formulated by my selective choice of what I believe to be true, right, and accurate. And while I believe it to be true, right, and accurate, it might not always fit with everybody else's mindset. So it's important to understand that while opinions are helpful, we have to ask where them opinions are coming from. Are they coming from a set of databases which you believe us to be fearful? Sorry about that. Sorry about that. We got totally disconnected there, totally went off there. My internet's been playing up. The heat is causing all sorts of issues with the internet. I've got to be honest, it was a bit glitchy in class and stuff, so do forgive me for that. But what I am probably trying to say to you here is that when we use any kind of spirit boxes, dowsing rods, mediumship development, whatever it may be, got to start asking yourself how much of us are we pledging in there versus what's really coming from an impartial mind where we're not really getting involved. And this really goes down to mediumship development and also your evidence as well. Or is your mind dictating, is your fear dictating how much evidence you produce, versus are you doing your evidence to the best possible standard that it can be for spirit? That's the bigger question you need to be asking. And I hope that sort of makes sense to people. My apologies there for the glitch. Hi Danielle from sunny Toronto. Yeah, it's very, very warm here in the UK. We've had quite a strong heat wave, which we're not designed for, I've got to be honest with you. Many people believe in their mediumship development by joining groups and do photo readings, feedback, any thoughts? So, again, very early on in my development, I did a lot of that. I had my own group. I didn't sit in other people's groups, I'll be honest with you. I built my own. And asked people to participate in that. That's how my business come to be. I sort of talked about this story a little bit in my group, which I know you're involved in. What I did was I opened a small group at the time. I was doing tarot cards that my brother had sort of bought me many years previous and stuff, and I just instantly knew what they meant. So what I did was started testing it on people because I wanted to see whether I was just making it up or whether people could understand what I was saying. Then from there I started to put like photo readings up. I started people asking to put photo reads up. And I used to I started reading for them like that, typing and stuff like that. Amazing for me who was dyslexic, because it really improved my English, I'll be honest with you on that one. You know, like anything, if you do it often enough and repeatedly enough, things start to get better in them worlds. So for me, it was very helpful, I'll be honest with you. Helped to build confidence. It is very psychic based. So in the beginning, I did a lot of it in psychic work, medium. So I would sort of look at the photograph. Then what I started to do was move the mind, and the spirit world was sort of coming forward. So I started doing it that way instead. Yeah, you know, my advice, if you're just asking for my advice, would be to open your own group. That's what I would do, open your own group. I love photo rooms, they're amazing things. The only issue is that everybody wants a reading, unfortunately, and that can be quite overwhelming for mediums, especially if you're still learning or still sort of sorting out or still sort of getting yourself up and on your feet. That can be a bit of an issue for you. If you're more experienced like yourself, it might not be a problem. 6 and 2 3s, but if you were asking my advice, open your own, do it. But that's the way I did it, so I'm obviously going to recommend that. But I will also say to you, there is also nothing wrong with some of them rooms on, you know, different social media platforms, and I've seen some phenomenal work come out of them. I have to be honest with you on that one. You know, I know Spirit Times just asked me if I'm going to start running some circles. I said I'll try and see if I can get something in August there. Maybe it's once a month, something like that. If I can accommodate it July, there's absolutely no chance, I'll be honest with you on that one. But I can certainly take a look and see if I can do something else. That would be my thoughts on that. But I've done both, and I think when you're doing mediumship development or you're sharing knowledge with people, it's very important that I've touched on every aspect of development. So whether it be photo readings, telephone readings, Zoom readings, working in groups, not working in groups, because it's important to understand every side of the coin. Some sides of the coin I like, some sides of the coins I'm not so keen on. But I've also understood as I've gone on in time and I've learnt more through my development and stuff, there's room for change all of the time. There's room. I mean, what some of the things I thought about, you know, 5 years ago in development, I don't think them things anymore, as I've understood more about how the mechanics in the spirit world work. And once over I thought there was only one way to do it. Now I realise there's 50 billion ways to do it. You know, I'm still sitting within my mechanical base that was given to me by the spirit world. So my advice here would be try both. Build your own group and work in somebody else's group and see which one you like best. That's the best way to go about it. Work with what works best for you, medium, and see how that works out for you. You might find the group works better for you. You might find your own group works better for you. It's gonna be a personal choice, that one. I don't mind either or, and I understand both. I've done both, so I don't have a problem with either one of them. But personally, because I opened my own group, I would always recommend you to go more down. But I know not everybody wants to do that, and that's okay too as well. Spirit Time saying what you think you attract. I'd agree to that. I'll be honest with you on that one. You know, in the early days, I didn't really sort of understand all of them things. You know, I didn't realise by thinking about the spirit world, it brought me closer to them. Not them closer to me closer to them. I didn't realise that sometimes the fear within me was interfering in my development and also interfering in the way in which that worked for the spirit world, and as time went on, I come to understand that more. That's why mediumship's a journey. You constantly, but you have to be wary of, and which I wasn't in the very early days, is how much I was projecting that out. Now I'm very aware of that. Sometimes I still do that from time to time, and that comes from a level of passion, but also comes from wanting to lift standards. But I understand as well that that's also where I'm coming from in my viewpoint. So I've always got to be aware that where I'm always trying to be as diverse as possible, and always trying to be as impartial as possible. There is times within, whether I do lives or whatever, where there's going to be a sense of my standard wanting to drop in, and I appreciate that not everybody wants to live to the high standards in which that I work at. That's okay, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's always going to be a bit of an irritation for me, because I do like to see good standards. In fact, I don't like to see good standards. I like to see amazing standards in evidential mediumship, especially in evidential mediumship. Other aspects of mediumship, I don't play enough in them fields, to have such a passion for that. But for evidential mediumship, I have a big passion for it, I've got to be honest, and wanting to see them standards and wanting to see the best for clients and sort of the mediums as well. So, I'm very strong about them things, and probably will I change, and that's not an opinion, that's based on wanting to see accurate evidence, not so much accurate evidence, but just wanting to see really, really, really good standards. But I'm not the only one playing them worlds. I know there's many a million a medium all pushing for the same thing, and that's a great thing, and I love that about mediumship, that we're all sort of playing on the same side of the fence, which is fantastic, and I absolutely adore that about mediumship. How do your students in class develop their clairaudience over time? Different classes, different exercises, different techniques, medium. Some of them get it certain ways. Some of the mediums in there have to shift them around and bring in different exercises. It very much depends on the instrument. Some exercises cover a broad spectrum of them, give or take a little tweak here and there. Others I have to completely change the exercise round, I've got to be honest with you, because as I say, every medium and every mind is different. Most minds are quite similar, so they'll get 60-70% of that exercise. They may alter and shift a little bit of their own to get them where they need to be. Some of them I can't take any of it at all, and I have to adapt that. Every medium's different. That comes from teaching skill sets. That's through working with different students over years, learning to understand what works for this mind versus what works for that mind, or having a chat with guides, having a chat with my people, looking at different ways in which that we can, which is where I'm constantly developing my skill set, because ultimately the more I'm developing my skill set, the more I'm doing for the teams and the mediums that sit in and around my classrooms. So for me, it's every mind's different, and every mind's going to do it differently. It's about learning to adjust, shift, and this is where with mediumship, especially when you're developing or training mediums, you've got to be adapting all the time. Not one shoe fits everybody. Does that make sense? Some shoes will fit, I don't know, say I had a ratio 12, right? 14. My ratio on my mechanics will fit around about 10 to 12 of them. There'll be 2 or 3 of them that need some more help, or it needs to be adjusted completely, because their minds just don't quite get it that way. But I understand that as somebody who's a good sharing of knowledge, I have to be able to shift. They can't shift for me. I've got to shift my exercise, my mechanics, my way of it could also be the way I speak it. Does that make sense? So sometimes the way I say something, people may take it one way, some people hear it another way. So it's important to explain that exercise sometimes in a couple of different ways, so that everybody's sort of on board. So sometimes it's not always the mechanical set, it's the way in which that I've delivered it, and that's very fitting with mediumship development when you're doing a kind of sort of rostrum work, private sitting, whatever it may be. Sometimes it's not actually that the mechanics are wrong. It's not so much that the way your exercise is wrong. It's the way in which I've delivered that to the minds in there, and therefore some minds need a little bit more adjusting of the word. So, for example, a workshop I did not long ago, everybody in there, but 10 or 11 of them, were all very similar, understood my wording. 3 of them in there were quite logical people, so the wording had to be shifted and altered for them to understand the exercise in which that I was giving them. Not because the exercise was wrong and not because the mechanics was wrong, but it was the way I delivered that information. It hadn't quite spun around their mind enough. So when you're sharing knowledge with people, it's in my opinion, and how I do it, I always learn to shift and alter. So I shift and alter me first, because it's always 99.9% of the time my fault. If I have picked it up right and I have delivered it right, then I have to then look at the medium itself and look at where their mindset is. Is there a lot of fear in there? Is it that they work a different way to other people in the room? So while we're trying to train clairaudience, it might be quite possible that that's not their primary it might be more clairvoyance. Does that make sense? So what I have to do is shift it. So I'll have to shift the exercise off of clairaudience, clairvoyance, and into clairaudience, and into clairvoyance, because that's how their mind works, and I have to accept that in the room, that's how that medium works. Even though it's a clairaudience workshop, I don't want that medium to be felt left behind, or that medium feels like they've wasted their money, or whatever it may be. So I just slightly adjust the exercise to bring in the clairvoyance, and it sort of brings everybody sort of up to speed. So it's a, not to sound sort of like I'm blammy and trumpet here, but it's just years of working with different minds and looking at the way in which that I speak, looking at the way in which I present, and looking at the way in which the mechanical minds are working, and having to assess students all the time, if you can understand that. Can you tell me a little bit about your book, Freestyle? Is it about connecting mediumship? So my book with my mediumship, or Freestyle Mediumship, is all about the mechanics. It slightly touches upon the mechanics, the ones that I'm busy writing. So there's a little bit of that in there. Then it's more about development. So it's got different exercises in it. It's got understanding relationship with guides, sitting in the power. It's very much a development book. That's what I would say to you with that. Not so much about connecting. It does briefly talk a little bit in there about me mechanics, slightly about the database, point reference, stuff like that, but nothing too depthy, I've got to be honest with you. Talks about like colours and mediumship, because I know a lot of mediums work with colour. I see that a lot of mediums, and more so if I've got mediums who are working more with energy rather than, I recommend the book I Have a Thanks Spirit Time. It's been a fabulous book. It's been very, very, very popular. I've been very fortunate and very blessed with that book. It's one of my favorites. I love what is evidence, but I love, and I tell you something else I love about it and all, it grows with you rather than against you. So what I mean by that is you could fill it up with development that you're doing right now. You could then rub all that out and go back and redo it 5 years later, and you'd find that your development shifted and altered. It was very much inspired, that book, to grow with you over time. Sometimes it's a refresher. And I will say this, sometimes I don't go back to basics, but sometimes it's nice just to have a bit more of an understanding of, where you are within your development, remind you where you've come, how far you've come along, which I think sometimes very nice. I have a book I read quite a bit, which is Gordon Higgins, On the Side of Angels. It's sometimes just a one I lean back on every now and then, just when, I just feel like I need to, because even as developed as I am and as understanding of the mechanics as I have, every now and then, I like to just, not come back to basics, but just like to remember how far I've come and where I've come from, and I find certain books just bring me back down to like that nice sort of position, if I could say that to you. So my book is generally briefly about my mechanics in the beginning. With inside of that is a good sitting in the power and a few different sitting power techniques. Further to that, there is some understanding of guides and also colours within mediumship. Within that is also pages of development, so different styles and techniques and stuff like that. So there's quite a bit in there. And at the back, what's in the back? Exercises. What else is in there? It has got a touch of teaching style in there as well. There's some teaching aspects in it as well. Very little, just sort of a little bit, but nothing too major. It's very much, I would say, a book very much for the beginner stroke intermediate, but also could be intermediate into sort of early professional. That's what I'd like to say. It covers a lot of the range. I would say What is Evidence is more professional book. It's not, I would say, a beginner's book. It's to follow on from Freestyle and Mediumship, if I'm honest with you. The mechanical book will sort of probably go in front of Freestyling, so it'll give you more of the base. That's what I'm busy at with at the minute, and I know you spoke to me about that. And then you would have your Freestyling, What is Evidence, and then eventually I'd like to add more, like, to that collection, more the professional. So what is trance, what is trance healing, philosophy, all the different sorts of topics and things. But I've still got time to write. Like, I think, well, I hope so anyway. I hope so anyway. But I hope that helps answer your question a little bit there for you. Okay, I see what you mean. It's a book you can read and reread as you develop. Yeah, very much so. I stopped selling paperbacks a while back, but I do want to bring that back in at some point. Just at the minute, it's easy for the digital copies, people like that. The only issue is you got to print it out, where with the digital copies, it works very much for use there. You have workshops for bringing evidence. Do you have a book that covers that? Yeah. It's called What is Evidence? So there's Freestyle and Mediumship, which is the one you just talked about, and then there's a one after that, which is What is Evidence? Yeah, my workshop, it's full, that one. That's an in-person one. I do different evidence ones, but I'm seeing more and more where I'm doing more in person again, which is what I did a lot of prior to being online. Will I still do stuff next year online? Yeah, bits and pieces of it, but I'm back to doing me in-person stuff, which I love very much. I do different workshops from time to time in different aspects of mediumship. So, for example, there's one coming with telephone numbers, which is unique to me. What's another one that I've got coming up? I think that's the only one I've got in evidence. So I tend to select certain areas and stuff, medium, and sort of work in them areas. Do I do ones on full evidence online? Yeah, from time to time. But people tend to want more of just a specific area rather than like a range, if I could say that. But I know that might be something to look at. I've never thought about that. But yeah, What is Evidence, which is the follow-on to Freestyle and Mediumship. So yeah. And then I'm going to do more on there when I get 5 minutes, of course, But anyway, so I hope that answers your question a little bit there for you. So yeah. So a little bit about, obviously, what's coming up. I've just been talking about telephone numbers, and it's actually quite a busy workshop, that one. So that one's in the second half of the year. There's a tarot workshop up for those who are into tarot. What else is up there on the my mediumship classes are up there as well. What other ones have we got going on up there? That's it for now. A lot of the in-person stuff's up as well, so if you want to have a look at that. Residential's not up yet, but it is in my Facebook group, and I know you're in there, Medium, so I'm sure you've seen that. So yeah, I will put more of what's due up for next year online, probably as we're heading more into September, and I get a bit more of a scope of where I actually want to be and what I want to do there. At the minute, all the in-person stuff's been very busy, so I've worked there very promptly, but I will put more online stuff up. Books are available via the website, www.daniellethehappymedium.co.uk, and actually says read first, read second, so you sort of know which way to go, if that makes sense. Other than that, that's about it for development at the minute. A lot more healing. There's a healing beginners going on in the second half of this year as well. That's online. A lot of people asking me for healing stuff. You have a retreat next year? Yeah, do I. I'm really looking forward to that, actually. I'm really excited for it. It's the first one I've done in a few years. I did some just after COVID, and they were very popular. And then obviously I sort of stepped back a little bit from them, but I'm ready to come back and do more of them, so I'm looking forward to that actually next year. I'm busy actually already, but I'm very grateful, I'm very humbled, I'm very blessed that people help me out there with that, and I am incredibly, and I've seen some of the other stuff that's been going on in the group. It's been it's busy. I've been all out this morning. My car went in the garage this morning, bless it. So I was on 3 buses, stood in bus stations for hours, well, not hours, but half an hour at a time. I forgot what it's like to get on a bus, Hey, but I tell you what it is, I met some cracking people, I'll be honest. I got chit-chatting to this one, chit-chatting to that one. It's nice, it keeps you humble, keeps you, just keeps you remembering where you come from and what you know, where you're from and why you do what you do and stuff. It was nice, actually. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a lovely little old lady I was talking to. She was good fun. She was fantastic, I've got to be honest. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So I'll leave this one here this evening. Like I say, I'm going for my tea because I've been in class today. I appreciate you coming forward as always. I appreciate your time and energy. I'll be back in probably about 2 weeks' time. I'll have a look at the circles for you and see if I can get them. If I can get them, I'll put them up on the website, so keep an eye on the website. If you're not already subscribed to the website, check that one out there as well. Everything else is available by the website. I'll get involved in the group or the Facebook page or Instagram. By all means, you're certainly welcome to follow me on any of them sessions there as well, any of them social media platforms. All right, have a beautiful week, and I will get the next one up ASAP. All right, big kisses, big hugs from me and the spirit world. Bye for now.